So, welcome everyone. Really happy to have you all here at the continuation of our uh, Empower Hours, where each week, every 2 weeks, we are focused on a new topic, something that's relevant to National Parks employees, about either the organizing process or things that we can bargain over, or bringing members from around our union to share their wisdom and experience with all of you all. Tonight, I'm really excited. Tonight, our focus is going to be on the Visitor and Resource Protection Division, the law enforcement community, kind of however you see yourself connected to those who are ensuring that the parks, the visitors, and the resources are safe. This is really focused at you, but I think that everyone will be able to learn something really interesting about being a union member and a federal employee through tonight's Empower Hour. So I'm going to give a quick introduction to NTEU, and then we're going to dive right into some prepared questions with our guests. You'll get to hear from one of your colleagues about why they're organizing, and then we will open up for question and answer, and then we'll have closing remarks. So, jumping in. Just a really quick introduction to NTEU. We are the National Treasury Employees Union. We got that name because when we started in 1938, we were representing IRS employees long before federal employees even had collective bargaining rights. Now we represent more than 150,000 federal employees in 38 different agencies and departments, including thousands of DOI staff at WASO, as well as the National Capital Region, including the law enforcement rangers there, and Bureau of Land Management. And then you'll hear tonight, we also represent employees at Customs and Border Protection, federal law enforcement training centers, and even the Federal Police Officers of Hawaii. NTEU only focuses on federal employees. So that's the only employees that we represent. We don't represent private sector. We don't represent contractors. And that means that all of our resources go to just focusing on what impacts federal employees. We also don't get involved in partisan politics. What we look at is how our elected leaders are voting on issues that affect federal employees at the bottom line. And those are the only issues that NTU takes a stand on. That means that we can run a really amazing union that has our headquarters are in DC, but we have 7 field offices all around the country because we know that federal employees work more than just inside the DC Beltway. And we have staff who work as lobbyists working to build relationships on Capitol Hill. We have a PR team working to make sure to tell the stories of federal employees and help you all communicate what you do and as federal employees and what our chapters do for their members. We have a incredible Office of General Counsel that works on lawsuits that affect large numbers of federal employees. Right now, we have a wide number of lawsuits affecting federal employees. They are really busy, and we have an organizing department that helps make sure that people who don't have a union, like you all, can have a union. Um, so, um, with that, I would love to introduce our guests for tonight. So, as I mentioned, we do represent a wide variety of federal employees from, like I said, DOI and the agencies we're going to hear about tonight, but also other regulatory agencies and scientists and researchers and judges and all kinds of employees. And what we have largely found is that our members are stronger together. When we are able to represent full agencies, what we call wall to wall, those are our strongest chapters where we can actually pull our strength and our support and our power together. So tonight we have Wil McKenzie, who is the president of Chapter 338. Some unions call their union branches locals or chapters. We use chapters. Um, and we have Vince Salgado, who is the president of Chapter 123, one of our many Customs and Border Protection chapters. I'm really happy to have you all here. Um, Let me quickly pin videos so that I can get folks in the same frame. Awesome. All right, well, welcome. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate your time. I lost my screen again. I don't know how I keep doing this. Okay, we will move forward. Um, I'd like to start with just some easy questions, getting to know folks. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your position with the agency that you work for, what you do, how it's connected to our law enforcement community, how long you've been there, how long you've been a federal employee, anything that, just a little bit to get to know you all. Um, Will or Vince, either one you want to get
Okay.
us started?
I can start.
Great.
Usually don't go first, but I'll start tonight. My name is Wil McKenzie. I'm the chapter president, like Lee said, of Chapter 338. Uh, I am an instructor at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Centers. And how does that apply to law enforcement? We currently train over 105 different federal law enforcement agencies, state and local police departments, campus and tribal law enforcement agencies, uh, in all different aspects of law enforcement. I've been at FLETC down here in Georgia for 11 years, and I have been in federal civil service for almost 22 years.
So, Vince, you're up.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I believe it's evening for everyone. I'm on the West Coast. My name is Vince Salgado. I'm the chapter president of NTEU 123 out here in Calexico. And if you don't know where Calexico is, I don't blame you. I don't invite people down here during the summertime. It gets to 120 plus degrees out here. But we are on the tip of California. If you're looking at the state's map, the far right-hand side, far bottom right-hand corner of California, right before you enter Arizona. So we're about an hour, about 45 minutes away from the Arizona border. I represent employees here in Calexico. I also represent employees in nearby cities, El Centro, Imperial, and Andrade, which is 5 minutes away from Arizona. So I cover that little spectrum or that little area, representing about almost 700 employees out here. Been the chapter president since 2014, so quite a long time, about 11 years now. Before that, I was the chapter vice president for 2 years, and then I was a steward for about 2 years as well, right before that too. So total amount of time representing employees out here has been about 15 of my total 18 years within the agency as a CBP officer out here at the ports of entry. So we represent, the bulk of our representation is law enforcement individuals, as officers, but also the agriculture specialists as well. We also represent our OIT individuals. they're not a large staff, but we still represent them. I believe we have about 12 now. And then our other component of our agency, it's Office of Facilities Asset and Management, OFAM, smaller acronym. And I think we got 10 employees that we represent as well. So the bulk is law enforcement officers, but we also have some non-uniform wearing individuals as well.
Awesome. That was a great introduction, both of you. Thank you. Um, I'd love to hear a little bit about why you got involved within your union. What kind of made you say, not only do I want to sign my membership card, but I want to take an active role?
All right, I'll take this one first, Will. I
You.
got involved as a chapter representative, kind of by getting involved with employees and taking charge. I was assigned to one of our smaller ports at the time. This is going back to 2012 or 11, maybe before that. Anyhow, lost all my years. I found myself being the catalyst where employees seemed to come to me and reach out to me. Vince, can management do this? Are they allowed to do that? Or, hey, this isn't right. The schedule wasn't done this way. Or it seems like this might be a violation. And I found myself diving into the policies and ultimately finding myself reaching out to our chapter president, vice president at the time. And ultimately, they would lead me in the direction to what I always have sitting here on my desk, which is our contract. It's a little bit thicker over the years. But I found myself researching a lot of stuff and then getting back to those employees. And I wasn't even a steward. We didn't have a steward in our local area out at that port, but I found myself doing that. And ultimately, our vice president said, "Vince, do you want to be a steward?" And I told him I didn't know what it took to be a steward. I don't know if I want to do that role. I don't know what it even is. Heard about the titles, and that's when the vice president responded. I still have his email to this day. His response is, "Well, you're already doing the job, so you've got it." And well, I found myself working as a steward under them and following their guidance. And well, I guess that helped because the following election, someone put my name in the hat to run as the vice president. I accepted. I didn't think I'd get in because I was fairly new at the time. But history tells itself. Became the vice president for 2 years and the president since then.
All right, quite the story. Will, how'd you get involved?
How do I follow that up? Um, I I've really been involved with the union for about 5 years now. So I'm still a youngster. I started off as kind of a hang around the union hall, try to figure things out, learn as much as I could. Our president at the time kind of talked me into being a steward and uh, gave me at my first grievance, and I didn't even have a clue what to do with it. So he walked me through the process, and I went into the step one grievance, and eventually the I won my first grievance, my first and only grievance. I won, and it was kind of invigorating, like Vince said, digging into all of this stuff, digging into the contract and the policies and the laws. It really made me want to get more involved. Um, Something else that really kind of pushed me towards being more involved is I got tired of being tired of hearing and saying that's not right. Somebody should do something. And at that particular time in our agency, um, there was a lot of fear of repercussions from the agency for standing up and saying something. And like I said, I just got tired of it. And the more I dug in, the more things that I could point out that weren't going right. And I went from steward to chief steward within about a year, and then got wrangled into the executive vice president spot. And then The former president, very, very good friend of mine, after about a year, he said, you know more about this than I do. You need to take the presidency. And I was kind of like Vince, I'm kind of a nobody. Nobody knows me here. I've been kind of keeping a low profile with everybody else. But my name appeared on the ballot, and I guess I knew more people than I thought I did. So I was elected right at about a year ago as the chapter president. And I can tell you it's very rewarding when you get a phone call or an email saying, okay, what would you like from the agency? Very, very rewarding when you know you're in the right. You're representing everybody from Lee, like I told you earlier, from a maintenance guy, a janitor, all the way up to a senior instructor. Uh, and you have I've got about 600 in my chapter, 600 bargaining unit employees, and they come from all walks of life, all different jobs. But it is super, super rewarding to know that I am their voice. I am able to take their concerns and their worries, address them with the agency, and figure something out along with the agency to kind of make it, I guess, a better place to work.
I think that was a great follow-up. Um, So I'm gonna volley back to you with that. I think it's a good segue into what's the biggest benefit to being unionized? What's a victory? If someone just came in new to your agency, what would you say? Why be in the union?
All right. I'll go ahead and take lead on or start on this one as well, Will. I think the biggest victory I can say is our contract. That's our most recent one that I can actually vouch for. I last year had the opportunity of being a part of our bargaining team. It was one of my, I guess it was on my bucket list as a representative of our union to be a part of a big team. I've been a part of small teams along the way in my last 11 years, and over the last year and a half, because it took about a year and a half. I was only supposed to be sitting in on our bargaining team for 3 sessions, and 3 sessions turned into 12. We got a lot of stuff, and I wish I could bring them out of my drawer. Over the years, our contract grew from what it was in 2011 was my first contract that I read into. Then our second one, 2017, grew about a half an inch, and then our last one was built and agreed upon. And I mean, I'm proud of what we did, of what NTU did as an institution to negotiate this contract. I think that's a big win, particularly more so given the tempo of things, of how things were happening politically and within our agencies, et cetera. And we were still able to achieve the contract that we did. Another big win that we could talk about is, Will was mentioning, when the agency's wrong and sticking it to them. And I mean, I was barely part of this I guess a cookie crumb. When I came in, I noticed problems that was going on. It was overtime issues where they weren't doing it right, and I didn't even know there was a national case going on. I'm brand new as a chapter leader here, and I'm filing grievances, and then I'm being told, hey, just Vince, calm down, there's a national grievance, put them in a stay. The local management is not going to agree with you because blah blah blah. Lo and behold, what I later found out as I was starting to learn and pick up of what was going on is this national grievance, which we now call the global settlement. And I used it just last week in a grievance, or I had to reference it in a grievance because our local management was yet again, managers seem to go in the circle where they tend to violate something and then they'll later come back around and do it again and forget what happened. So in this global settlement, it settled a ton of cases nationwide for CBP officers, agriculture specialists, etc. And it was a large sum of money that the NTU in the national level they fought. They took to an arbitrator. They won. I believe they won a couple appeals, and ultimately they ran out of appeals. and over $20 million was settled that the agency had to pay out to all these individuals nationwide. That was huge. And for the
It's
employees that are
so
still here today,
huge.
yes, it's $20 million. It's a lot of money. We got a recent win too. I mean, I could go on talk about our, what NTU has done for our agency for hours, but I need to give Will a chance too.
All right. Unfortunately, I haven't had a $20 million win. Congratulations, Vance. I'm not. We're still a pretty new chapter. We only became NTEU in 2017.
Mm.
So again, a really new chapter. So I would say one of the biggest benefits is just having a voice, just being able to
Oh.
go to your steward or send somebody on the executive board an email, ask the question, present your concerns. Um, Bless you. But to have somebody there who will stand up for you. Um, like I said, everybody was scared of the agency, and it's everybody's voice should be heard. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has ideas, and as an executive board member, the president in particular, I've got a direct line through at least the deputy director, if not the director of FLETC, where I can voice concerns. I can bring all these smaller things to light and kind of head them off at the pass before we end up in this huge lawsuit or arbitration or whatever. Um, but it's I have figured out it's the little things that you do for people. Um, answering their overtime question, being able to answer what the contract says about this, what managers can do, what they can't do, what we are supposed to do. Um, every week in my chapter, I put out an email to all the members of the bargaining unit, and one part that I was kind of questioning if I should put it in my email or not was know your CBA. So every week in my email, I'll take a section out of our contract and add it into the email, um, just so everybody can understand. Okay, this is the policy, this is the contract, this is how it's done, and that generally the following Monday will produce, two or three phone calls saying, "Well, hey, my boss isn't doing this." Uh, and I think the biggest benefit is they tell me I don't use their names. I go to the director. If he gets mad, he gets mad at me. He doesn't get mad at everybody else asking these questions. So having somebody available to take your concerns forward uh, is one of the biggest benefits that I see in my chapter. And honestly, it's an honor that these people trust me to take their concerns forward and aren't afraid to ask questions like they were before.
Yeah, excuse me. Um, I think both of you all brought up, kind of touched on a really important point that our contract is, at the end of the day, just a stack of papers, maybe a really big stack of papers. But the power comes in having a union, people together who actually enforce it, who hold the agency accountable. That our work is day after day of making sure that folks know their rights and that management is doing what they're supposed to. And I think that you all said that really well. Um, I think that is another really good lead into. Um, What is what is the day to day? What are some of the articles in your contract? What are some of the things that you deal with the most as you're representing employees? Um, uh, what type of issues do you all see the most? And what's important to your members?
Will, you want to start on this one first?
Absolutely. You've taken the last two, and that will lead me into probably the number one issue that I see weekly is Chapter 2 in our, or I'm sorry, Article 2 in our contract, which is the agency will be the agency fair and equitably treat everybody the same. That is the number one thing. I can tell you 11 years ago, I was told by some of the old timers when I first got to FLETC that the good old boy system is prevalent. And it took me a few years to see it, but um, it once I started seeing and understanding, it was very prevalent at the time. So still we have some I call them old guard, managers that have been around for quite a while that want to continue with the way things have used to be. Um, so I deal with fairness and equitability on a weekly basis. And I took a few notes just thinking about this. Another good one that I deal with is employee rights. What are employees entitled to? What does the agency have to provide them? Um, let's see, safety and health. Safety, I mean, we're a training facility. I think it was just a few weeks ago. There was kind of an investigation because a student shot themselves in the foot. Um, so not that we did anything wrong, not that the student did anything wrong, but that really came down to looking at how we do things, making things safer for everybody, especially the firearms instructor standing right next to that student. And one more that is uh, really we are really hot and heavy on is scheduling. What some people have not heard is we have been tasked with training 10,000 ICE agents in 90 days. And yes, the scheduling is a absolute nightmare. So we are currently doing some impact and implementation bargaining of working multiple shifts, of working um, different work weeks, to cover 7-day operations, to cover what ends up being 18-hour days with multiple shifts of instructors. Um, so we are knee deep in that right now. Something else that we're negotiating is bonuses, retention pay, monetary awards. We're coming up towards the end of the fiscal year. And as everybody knows, there's a last minute push to spend every penny. So we are trying to make sure that every penny goes back to the workforce, goes back to those who deserve it, those who not only do their job, but bust their backside to do it as well as they can day in and day out. Especially with these proposed multiple shifts and working on Saturdays and Sundays. You know, everybody from the maintenance mechanic that works on our cars to the senior instructors, we have to really work hard to get these 10,000 ICE agents trained. And I think I think it's going to end up turning out very nice for our FLETC employees. Matter of fact, I've got a meeting Thursday afternoon with the deputy director to discuss just that, the bonuses, retention pay and stuff. Um, so right now, that is mainly what we're really bargaining, is I bargaining all of how we're going to do this. So that has been taking up most of my days here for the last 2 weeks or so.
I'm so glad that you mentioned I&I, impact and implementation bargaining. Can you explain just a little bit about what that means for someone who hasn't been in a union before?
So when agencies um, try to implement something new, try to change how things are done, not that they're necessarily um, that they can't do it, but in certain cases they can do it. So just like my agency, they can change our work hours, our work week. They legally and by the contract, they can do it. It's a management right. So what we have implemented, or I'm sorry, what we have started is I&I bargaining, impact and implementation, meaning if you implement this, this is the impact it's going to have. Um, and I've done this about 3 times this year, and the agency has come around, and we've ended up bargaining some pretty good deals for not only us, the workers, but for the agency themselves, mutually beneficial.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Vince.
All right. Articles, man, you hit one of the articles I was going to talk about on the nail right there. Same article. Article 2 is just, the fairness and equitability. And almost every when we grieve something, we have a formal form. When we go to the second stages and forward, we reference it as a 280. But that's an article we allege as being violated on almost every single grievance we have. Article 2, our fairness and equitability. What's fair for one should be fair for all, and in being equal amongst everyone. Other articles that we see a lot of violations and fighting for. I mean, the biggest one we have, as I mentioned earlier, bypassed overtime led to a global settlement. So our Article 35, as we under our contract for overtime. One of the other biggest ones was during our contract negotiations, or actually prior to it, the agency wanted us make sure that the officers, agriculture specialists, and all the other non-uniformed employees stayed healthy. And part of being healthy was fitness time. And we were successful in negotiating the fitness time. We had a pilot program that was out for about a year, and it worked out great. No issues, major issues, I should say. But nonetheless, it got incorporated into our current contract. And as soon as our new contract came to be, we started seeing issues with it. So locally, we've got a ton of those grievances. It just seems to be going about. And as I mentioned in my introduction, we live in an area that isn't a desirable area. And that's why I say I will never invite my friends, close colleagues down to my area during the summer, because it gets 120 plus. But we also, because we're just coming out of the summer months, we saw a lot of those health and safety grievances related to heat and things that the agency isn't providing our employees, our members to do in order to do the job right. I mean, I get it. As Will was mentioning too, they have the right to, management has their certain rights. And one of those rights include to assign work. And I go to management and I say, I understand you're right. It's to assign work, but assign work so we have and give us the right tools to do that job. If we're not given the right tools to do that job, how do you expect us to have a good outcome? And working in our environment, 120 plus degrees, and they have us standing in areas where we're out there for an hour, sometimes over an hour, because someone is caught up with doing something else to push us forward. Well, what's going to protect us from that heat? We need a fan, we need ACs, we need swamp coolers, as we call them down here, shade, canopies. We were successful a couple of years ago in getting electricity and running water in these locations, and the agency spent a few grand because they didn't think they needed to, and we fought them on it, and they came back. And actually what we did is we scheduled a meeting on the hot August day at noon and brought our high managers from our field office down to stand out there with us, and then they finally understood. I understand, Vince, why you guys need this stuff. So, that
That's
being
some
said,
real
I mean, I
organizing,
do
and I
go,
love that.
yeah, of course.
Um, uh, So, um, speaking about health and safety, one of the things that we hear a lot from parks employees all over, really, but definitely in visitor and resource protection, is critical staffing levels and decreased funding for the NPS law enforcement budgets. I know that NTEU has lobbied Congress in support of both CBP and FLETC employees, such as like submitting appropriation requests for increased staffing. Can either of you speak to legislative efforts to advocate for like the federal law enforcement community?
Uh,
Will, I don't know if you've been out there before the legislative conference or meetings with our congressional leaders, have you?
um, I didn't make it to legislative this year. As for the meeting with our local legislators, I'm not actually, even as president, a full-time union guy. So, it takes an act of Congress, especially nowadays, shorthanded, uh, to actually get out there and visit these people. So, unfortunately, most of the time in the mornings, I'm, typing and all of that stuff, and in the afternoons, I'm actually working with students. Um, if you don't mind, Vince, I've got a few things that I just wrote down real quick. Uh,
Oh,
here at FLETC, we're no different than anybody else. We're always short. Never enough people, never enough resources, never enough money. Um, it's it's almost the government way. Do more with less. As I mentioned earlier, with this great big push that the administration is putting out there with a demand for many, many ICE agents and Homeland Security investigators, also add them, that's uh, another thousand agents we have to train in 90 days. Um, Between that and some of the things that Lee mentioned, going to the Senate Appropriations Committee, um, that's something that I have read in the president memos and online that our union's not afraid to do. Our national president is not afraid to stand up in front of all of these decision makers and say, hey, look, here's the deal. If this is what you want, this is what it's going to take. So between the push for agents and I believe the standing up in front of appropriations, we starting first quarter, which is right around the corner, we're hiring 100 instructors, 85 support staff, and from what I'm being told, our budget this year has almost doubled uh, to support, obviously the ICE agents. But when you're talking about twice the agency budget, once these ICE agents are trained, we have money for almost brand new facilities. We have all the equipment that we need to do our job. We've got this extra 100 instructors. We've got these 85 support personnel. Um, and I don't think without support from the national office, I don't believe we would have gotten near what we got there. I think the word was put out, the word was heard, and now we're sitting here very busy, but we have more people, we have more money, we'll have more resources. Uh, so I guess this is also a benefit of having people even higher than my chapter on the national level talking to committees in Congress, they're hearing our voices. So it all goes forward, up as high as it can go. And in this case, I'm very thankful for the national office for standing up for what we needed.
Yeah, the advocacy and lobbying efforts are a really big part of representing federal employees. Vince, it sounds like you've got something to add here.
Well, just a little. I started
Awesome.
to throw it at you, Bill, because I wanted to give you that opportunity, and we haven't had a chance to meet face to face. I mean, I don't have all my photos up, but uh, all the years going to legislative conference, and what that is one time a year, and it's not the only time a year that NTU does this, but it's one time a year that NTU invites all the chapters that they represent to come on out and lobby Congress, and they've got their agenda on topics that NTU has discussed internally and said, hey, these are the important topics that need to be discussed and brought to the attention of congressmen, the senators, the all of the leaders up there. And we have these meetings, and these meetings, I remember my first one, which was back in 2013. I went as the vice president, and I went up there, and I was in awe because you're in these buildings that you've only seen on TV, and you're meeting with your representatives, and you're pushing big issues that have to do with it. And every year, I think it's almost every year, we're talking about the funding for all the federal agencies that NTU represents. We also bring up the reducing our costs, our out of pocket costs for medical, because each year it seems to go up and up and up and up. But NTU, and I mean, the one thing I would like to say on that is not just the opportunity to meet individuals that are leading our nation and voting on passing our budget, which they seem to not get to do today, but it's actually pushing those issues that affect those agencies, federal agencies that NTU is representing, and they're big topics. Now, outside of the legislative conference, I have had other meetings with our local representatives to discuss local issues that are impacting my employees. And I mean, any federal employee has that ability to do that. But as a chapter leader, raising those issues to those congressional leaders and saying, hey, this is what's affecting our membership. Our membership finds these issues to be important. And having that guidance, having that those resources to actually talk to our team in NTU to give us pointers, hey, trying to schedule this meeting. This is the topics I'm trying to discuss. Any pointers on what I should, how could sway our local individuals to side with us, or to back our support on this when they go forward and push this stuff. And that's what NTU has done. And what I see on their legal team, which, I know there's a lot more things their legal team do than just organizing, but they keep us in the loop on what things or what topics are being discussed, what new bills are being introduced that are going to negatively impact us, but also help us out too. And I mean, I just got the email today regarding the funding. That's why I was on top of mind today too.
Yeah, I think you all raise um, uh, the idea that there are multiple pathways to getting resolution and building power for federal employees. That some of it we do through contract negotiations or through workplace grievances, but sometimes it means getting out there and being the real voice of your agency in front of our elected leaders and holding them accountable as constituents and as federal employees. So thank you all for raising that. Looking at the time here, I think I've got time for one more question. And then I want to hear from one of our NPS employees, and then we'll open it up for questions. Um, uh, it sounds like both of you work in workplaces that cover a wide variety of positions, from commissioned officers to a variety of other positions as well. How do you ensure that everyone's concerns and needs are met? Uh, do you find that any one group has issues that are so unique that they don't fit in with the whole group?
I think that everyone fits in one way or another, but there is no one size fits all shoe, I guess. So each component that we represent, or each component of agency is somewhat different, but they've got their similarities. I mean, our contract is coverage for all those members, all those different, I mentioned it earlier, OIT, the OFAM, officers, agriculture specialists. They've got their small nuances that makes their characters different or their work environments different. But one way or another, I have to find that connection that makes it relevant. Leave issue. Hey, my agriculture specialists are complaining regarding the way leave was done and blah blah blah, and I'm not seeing it as an officer, so I take that officer hat off and I say, you know what, lay it out for me, let's meet face to face, because I think that's a very important element to understanding an employee or one of our members problems or complaints, is to meet face to face with them and schedule that time so we can talk about it. And once they lay it all out, I put it in a comparison with as an officer or other units that we represent. And yeah, there's some similarities. Our contract language doesn't differentiate except for a few areas for bidding purposes. But for the most part, our contract is written one way for the entire bargaining unit. And yes, there's some nuances that make it different based on the areas, but outside of that, they've got their similarities. There's just, I don't know what Will sees in his area. You know, our chapters are different by their structures.
Absolutely. We're very, very similar. Um, our contract, like you said, in very small areas, it may apply to instructors more than facility maintenance people. But, regardless, as government employees, we all face the same things. And you touched on the benefits piece earlier. Everybody's interested in benefits. Everybody's interested, and quite oftenly, unfortunately, have pay issues, leave issues. Most of the major issues are very, very similar. Uh, Now, when we get down to the safety piece, yeah, maybe a little bit different here and there. Um, but I think that the differences in the points of view from the guy that mows the grass all the way up to the guy that takes the students out in a boat 60 miles out in the ocean to teach them something. you know we all have the same very similar issues, and I think that makes us strong as a chapter, because we're not just one point of view. That everybody's view is accounted for. Everybody's view is recognized, and everybody's voice is heard. Um, to me, it doesn't matter, who you are. If you are a bargaining unit employee, you can call me anytime. You can stop by the union hall and we can have a chat. We can have a soda. We can have a cup of coffee. We could talk about anything that you want. And moving out of the way that the good old boy system used to be prevalent. This is kind of generally a foreign concept, but it is really catching on, really gaining a lot of speed. And I see great things in the near future for everybody, mainly because we are getting stronger. I don't care what differences you have. You may not like the guy next to you. We're all in the same boat. We're all here for the same reason. So it's all about strength in numbers. And the more you have in your bargaining unit, the more you have represented, the more the agency takes you seriously.
Well said. All right, I'm gonna pause here, and we're gonna switch over and hear briefly from one of our NPS employees who's organizing. Let's see. Awesome. Welcome, Jared. Happy to have you here. Jared works at North Cascades National Park, and is going to share a little bit about why he's organizing a union.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me on here. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to kind of, I guess, voice my perspective. and at least my hopes and goals and dreams with what unionizing could do for National Park Service employees. I know it's kind of the sentiment with this agency that the law enforcement officers have kind of been marginalized and kind of put to the side with our needs, just kind of like really goals as well. I appreciate that Vince and Will were talking about like being able to hire more people and retain people. That's one of our biggest issues right now is we have an attrition rate of 120 some people per year, and we're only putting through about 100 in FLETC. So actually having steps or goals or plans in place would be really helpful, or having at least an agency be able to advocate for us as a group as a unit, as a whole, to say, hey, why is this happening? Can we address it and actually break it down? I think that's kind of one of the bigger struggles I think that we face with this agency is just having that type of representation, whether it's actually figuring out and being held accountable for standby pay after hours, right? We've all kind of had this gentleman's agreement and a handshake of like, oh, if you're around and in town, you're available for the poor folks that have to rent from the government. And, they know directly if you're home or not, if your personal car is there, and then you'll get flack for it the next day because you didn't go to that call out. Well, these are things that technically I feel like the agency needs to address, and they need to support us with it if they want to keep their employees happy and healthy and moving into the future. So I know for me personally, it's been actually a really great thing to organizing. I've been kind of leading the charge here at North Cascades, and it's been really great to get out into the different work groups as well and talk to the other people that have a lot of the same or similar struggles that we do, as like not getting an allowance or not actually holding the agency accountable for hazard pay, or I just spent all night out on this SAR. What do you mean I'm not getting overtime? I was working. Well, you weren't actually working because you slept for an hour or two. So we can't actually charge you that overtime the entire time. That seems pretty unacceptable to me in a few ways. So it's really just about having that advocate for us. I really am hopeful with it. Part of me is a dreamer and just looking forward to just having someone on our side, because I personally, I mean, I've only been with the agency since 2019, and there's been changes and it's been good, and there's been more changing than I thought ever could happen with one agency in the last 2 to 3 years. But it's not, in a sense, it's not ultimately what needs to happen because we don't have a voice or say. And I can tell you, like, just having the opportunity to talk to you, Lee, or Stephanie, she's the Stephanie Price, the organizer here in the Pacific Northwest, is I really feel seen and I really feel heard. And I feel like the things that I'm bringing up and saying these are an issue. Hey, we need to be classified like every other federal police officer. Why are we not 1801s? Why are we still in the 0025 series? Why are we getting excluded from the 3.8% pay bump? Why are, all these things that we all think about every day. And it affects us. It affects us all in one way or another. So thank you for letting me speak to just kind of the struggles and challenges here. And hopefully we'll be able to make some change altogether.
Thank you so much. I think you probably, um, I'm sure that what you said has been echoed so many times throughout the parks. I know I've heard it. I think that a lot of folks are looking for how do we come together and build a strong voice and a community. How do we make sure that we are taking care and holding the agency accountable, but also like building something that's even better. And doing that together. So we've got a few minutes left. We can open this up for questions if folks have any questions for Will or Vince. And then we will close things out. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. Oh, I've got a question. And this might be more for, actually, I actually don't know if this is more for Vince. Uh, uh, Are either of you a member of a police association like FLEOLA, the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, that provides additional benefits? Can you speak to that at all?
No, I'm not a member. I've heard of them. Um, so I understand there's some differences. I'm not too sure how I could be wrong on some of these details. So bear with me. Um, I've been asked in regards to, hey, have you heard of this? And I've heard, never deep dived into it, but my understanding is there's some differences. Uh, One of them being, I guess, the biggest one is they only represent law enforcement agencies versus NTU represents law enforcement agencies and non-law enforcement agencies. That's a big one there. I mean, so there's discrepancy. But one of the bigger differences, Will and myself have talked a lot about our national collective bargaining agreement, and I think that's one of the biggest differences uh, that if you want to compare the two together, they don't do, from what I understand. Again, if there's a consideration out there of thinking going that route, look into it. But as far as I understand and what I've understood of them, they do not collectively bargain for a contract for the membership at all. Why does that matter? Big time it matters. Without our contract, we're just basing ourselves on law, rule, regulation, and no interpretation in between. Where we're all law enforcement officers, I believe here, so we enforce law. Law has a lot of gray area that takes us to court to battle it. I don't go to court unless I have to testify on why I did something. But what we go to take, what someone takes to court is there's that gray area. So what the law or rules say that apply to us. If we're talking about leave, like I mentioned earlier, leave says what it says. You know, OPM has their guidance as to what they want the agencies to do, and then that's it. But what our contract does is it takes over where the agency's guide or the OPM's guidance left off. It lays out a specific way to do something. Bid and rotation's a big one here. We just got done with it, and we have our headaches that we're still grieving now. But without our BRP Article 13 bid and rotation process, we're left at management just deciding to, I guess they have the right to assign work, and that's it. But there's that gray area. Signing work does not include your choice of a shift, a schedule, which is your days off, a specialized unit or team that you get to work for. And I talked about our contracts that I've worked under, which is the 2011, 2017, and now 2025 contracts. Without those contracts, what we had before when I was a rookie, I'm going to say rookie, I was a rookie at one point, but going back to 2008 when I was a rookie, we didn't have a contract. We had something different. Don't even want to recognize that acronym anymore. But it was basically you had to be on the good old boy list of management to be in a specialized team or a special unit, or to be on a specialized or not even a specialized anything. It was just to work a day shift and not be stuck on the midnight shift. 80% of our employees do not want to be on midnights. They prefer to be on days or swings. Then there's that other few. But if you were not on the management's good side, they treated us like they treat their managers. If they're mad at their managers, they shove them to the crummy areas that that no one wants, that they don't even like, but they know they have to have it. The shifts that just have to be manned in order to have a 24-hour operation. And that's how it happened to us. In 2011, it was a big, huge, well, I guess it was prior to that when we got our contract signed off. It was 2010. We got it implemented in 2011, though. And it was a huge success. I saw the major difference between working under a contract and not having a contract that protected our rights. So, I mean, that's if someone's thinking about going that direction, that would be my take. My personal take is to what I know of the differences.
I appreciate that. We've got some questions in the chat, but Jared, I saw that you had your hand raised. Did you want to add something or ask something?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in real quick. FLEOA is really the only protections that we as NPS officers have right now, because we're not unionized. And they really only cover us in like the workplace issues for liability in that sense. So they'll cover us legally where the agency won't for any sort of the legal issues. I think like one of the things that I personally would be looking forward to with the union is I have 5 supervisors and I'm the only field eligible unionized employee. So it's like how that maths out, right? Like even if I did
Yeah.
have a grievance or if I wanted to talk to someone other than a supervisor, I can't unless I talk to someone at another park. So um, I think about that a lot of times too, of just like having the little guy be heard in a sense, but also the coverage that comes with it besides FLEOA, because we've kind of been limping through having FLEOA cover a large swath of our issues that really shouldn't be their problem, like the 1801 um, reclassification.
Yeah. We got
I
a question. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna kind of echo on to what his concerns are. Jared. You mentioned so there's another I guess I don't know if you guys have heard of it. There's another one called PORAC, and at one point NT was actually looking into this. So under PORAC, they have what's called a legal defense fund because there is a concern with our law enforcement officers uh, nationwide regarding where NTU takes care of the administrative piece on labor issues, but then there is that piece, that concern with civil and criminal liabilities and doing our job, and we have to go to court. And we've seen it in our areas too. But there's a component under that PORAC, which is called the Legal Defense Fund, LDF, which gives chapters that ability to get just that coverage where NT may leave off. And NT nationally at one point was looking at that, and where they left off was that's as an option for chapters to reach out to that I don't want to call them an entity. I don't know if that's the right terminology for them, but that agency that and look into that extra protection. And I know that there are some chapters within NTU, and a bunch of them are usually like the southern borders. They have that legal defense fund, and it doesn't cost much of the chapter. They charge per individual because it gives that coverage where I've now got the labor side taken care of by NTU, and now I've got the civil and criminal, as long as it's related to your work, taken care of by the legal defense fund under PORAC.
I'm glad you brought up Porak. I actually have heard that some of our chapters even pay that membership fee for their members to make sure that folks get that coverage. We're a little bit over, but I do want to get to questions in the chat. How do you convince other law enforcement officers to start unionizing? When bringing up to unionize, it seems taboo to them and they avoid it.
I think
Um,
I'm sorry, Vince, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I was going to ask you, Will, to go ahead and go first if you like.
Um, that is kind of kind of a tough question. Um, I can tell you why it seems taboo. Like I said earlier, with the good old boy system and not making waves, if you want to move up the chain, get promoted, get those premium shifts, get as much overtime as you want. You got to be buddies with somebody. Um, I think one of the other aspects of breaking that chain of having to know somebody is, having somebody like I mentioned earlier to be the voice of all the law enforcement. Um, they don't necessarily, I should say it this way, if you don't necessarily want your name brought into it, give it to the union. You know, put the blame on me for bringing it up. Um, it's a protection that the union can provide, to people that really want to almost stay low key and don't want to make waves. Uh, let the union do it. And something else is just the benefits of what the union will fight for. I was a former local police officer, um, and we weren't unionized, but the jurisdiction next to us was. I had to pay for all my equipment. However, that jurisdiction next to me, they got new equipment, they got clothing allowances, and they had all the benefits of being a union where if I ripped a uniform at night, well, guess who was responsible for replacing it? Me. making $30,000 a year, I had to replace my own uniform. I had to pay for my agency patches to be patches and sewing to get my patches on my uniform. There's things that the union can really stick up for, and I don't want to say make the agency, but make the agency do what's right, do what's right um, for their workers.
Thanks, Will. Vince, did you want to add to that?
Oh man, he got me on that one. I mean, in a nutshell, I know our membership's at 100%. I guess I should have opened with that. It was not always at 100%, and now my huge challenge is keeping it at 100% because if I dip below, oh, I'm going to be devastated. It's just it was easier to keep it at 96, 98, 99, go back down a little bit. So our biggest seller for our membership is, and again, this is just I'm speaking for our chapter, is our membership 100%. We're not 100% perfect. Our members are never 100% happy. You can never make anybody happy 100% of the time, but they understand that just because they don't agree with a process doesn't make it the wrong process. With that being said, like Will mentioned, a lot of our members don't know where to go to initiate that fight, but then a lot more don't want to be that person to cause the wave, to raise a stink with management. You know what? I rather just not say anything if I have to do it myself. And that's what that's what they trust in the union, in NTEU, our local chapter and other chapters, because we got a lot of people that transfer here or transfer out, and they trust NTEU to represent them when they think there's. I always tell people, and I hate using the phrase, but I always say when I meet my new hires, anybody else that comes with a question, a lot of people are hesitant to ask, but I tell them the same thing. There is never a dumb question. I'd rather you ask any question that you may think is dumb, because what may start as a small, minute question, I'll find an argument to make. And even if I can't see the contractual violation, and it's just a feelings matter. And again, as law enforcement individuals here today, we don't we don't enforce feelings, but I understand what an employee goes through. And at the end of the day, I always say to myself, you know what? I'm sure I'll find something later on. I'm just not in the right mindset. And going back to what Will also mentioned earlier today, our biggest one, fairness and equitability, Article 2, more than likely, that's what ends up happening in a lot of our grievances. What, neighbor next door got, officer today is now wanting to grieve because they're upset that they got and I didn't get. So there's our grievance right there. And that's our biggest seller to keep our membership not just at 100%, but to entice others that were questioning whether they should be members. I got 2 new members that I have to, they just started this week, and I got to reach out to them and just have a discussion. But they're already reaching out to me asking, hey, I hear you guys are good at what you do. I'd like to sign up. And I said, no. Let me tell you what we do first so you understand it. Because one of the things I also tell them too when I'm recruiting new individuals, I let them know I'm not here just to sign you up into our union. I'm here to explain it first. And I give them my horror story when I was a rookie in 2008, where I walk in with the chief steward. I was told, you're going to go sign up in the union. And I walk up with the chief steward there, and he hands me the form to sign up in the union with it pre-made with my name already written out, but with his pen. And all I was told to do was just sign here. I signed there, and I was in and out of his area within less than a minute. Now, I didn't understand until later on when I became a steward what actually it was before I became a steward when I had to use the union. What I understood what the union was good for, and that's what I pushed to our employees to try to get them on board and become part of our 100%.
Yeah, I feel like I neglected to mention your 100% membership. It's pretty amazing. And I often say that management doesn't always necessarily know who's in the union, but they do know how strong we are and how many members we have. They know if you're at 100%. Who's in the union because they know it's everyone, and that's pretty damn powerful. Um, Jared, I see you got your hand raised again.
Yeah, so I feel like I can speak to the NPS kind of like sentiment here in the sense of like the law enforcement feels like it's been marginalized so much in this agency. It feels like there's actually been external sources that have tried to put pressure onto keeping us in the 0025 series into actually not getting some of the other benefits like with 1801s, 1811s, without being stovepipe, those types of things. I think that correlates in. I would like to hear both your opinion, Will and Vince, on like your union seems like it's more law enforcement dedicated and focused. I think the issue that a lot of NPS officers are having is like they don't want to join a bigger union with all of the other employees to then get marginalized even more. So having some sort of reassurance that our issues are just as valid as everybody else's issues and they'll be fought for the same, I think would be a really big selling point. And I think it's kind of tough to break that culture that we currently have of like we want a law enforcement union. Well, that's the ultimate goal and dream. And that perfect goal might stand in the way of good enough or making it just better now is I think the best way that I can put that or how I see it and why I'm full on NTEU union. I don't.
There, you want to jump in?
Not sure if Will wants to talk about that first.
I'll let you have it, Vince.
Well, as I was typing away, I noticed that there were two questions in the chat, and I think we talked about one of them, and the other one being I was typing it out so Kellogg could be responded to before I jump into what Jared was mentioning. So the question that Kellogg had asked was, how will NTU help or create the changes that Jared has mentioned? And I was going to kind of talk to the piece regarding the contract. You know, that's one big. I think that's one big piece that NTU. If you guys don't, I'm not sure too familiar with your guys' agency, whether or not there is a contract already in place or not. But I believe that's going to be a big piece that NTU will take care of for you guys. And again, I can't speak for the national office, but I'm just saying what I've seen NTU do for us. In addition to that, ensuring that the agencies actually are held accountable for what they have agreed to in a collective bargaining agreement. And also, I mean, what we do here locally doesn't end where we right here locally. We have our resources at the national office. Sometimes we have what's called a national grievance. So it's affecting people nationwide, and they grieve that matter, whether it's just one agency or multiple agencies. They take care of those. They have those resources to do so, and those are just things that NTU will do if if you guys decide to go that route and take NTU to make those changes in your work area for your guys' agencies. And I'm sorry if I got off topic with Jared's question there for a second. Just I wanted to make sure individuals that were on the chat were also getting some kind of response back.
Thanks, Vince. So Jared, I mean, I think this also goes a little bit to Kellogg's question, but some of this is what you all want to do, and having the legal and financial resource backup by having your dues money and attorneys that work with you all to do those things. Like we were talking about earlier, there's different pathways to ensuring that we're fighting for employees, whether it is the contract or sometimes it not exactly the same, but I think some examples would be we have advocated for with OPM for new localities for rates of pay. We have, I mentioned earlier very briefly, we have submitted statements for appropriations to advocate for increased staffing and funding. We go and actually, our president and our members will testify in front of Congress during budget hearings, in front of different committees about the issues that you all are actually facing. And so there's a wide variety of ways, as well as taking like national grievances, like Vince was mentioning, up and into our court system, where we are looking at whether it's $20 million in back pay or restoring of various rights or protecting rights, or sometimes even working with agencies for what the agency is looking to advance, additional protections, and things to help advance the mission. We partner with agencies to advocate as well, that it isn't necessarily always a fight. Sometimes we actually have a common goal. And that's what's best for the employees is happens to be what's best for the agency. Um, uh, we are so far over time here. But I think this has been such a robust conversation. Oh, I really appreciate, Vince, that you dropped stuff in the chat there too. Um, uh, we should be wrapping up now. So I will make a quick plug that if you have not signed your 1187, that's the membership form that ensures that we can get to an election. We need 50% of all of the eligible employees to sign that to be able to file for an election in each of the regions, the Alaska, Intermountain, and Pacific West. We are getting close in many places. And so your 1187 could be the one that pushes us over the mark to be able to get to that election so that all employees get to have that democratic right to vote and choose to have a union. One thing that we didn't mention in talking about impact and implementation bargaining is one of the huge benefits is from the moment that you all are certified, from the moment we win that election, um, uh, any changes that are made to your working conditions, your terms of employment, the agency has to bargain over, even before we get to that contract. That is an immediate protection, that they don't get to do things and then come talk to us later. They have to brief us and we get to bargain over any of those changes, whether it's changes to work schedules, whether it's changes to consolidating different units or a wide variety of things. Whether we can bargain substantively or over the impacts and implementation, we get to bargain over it. It looks like the link was just dropped in the chat. You can also find it if you're watching this on the replay at www.nteu.org/NPS, and you'll see multiple buttons around to sign your 1187. That is a secure site. The only people who see those 1187s are myself, the other organizer working on NPS, Stephanie Snow, and when we submit them to the Federal Labor Relations Authority. So thank you all for being with us. Any closing remarks, Will and/or Vince?
Don't give up, Jared. Don't give up. Keep fighting the good fight. And my advice would be to open it up to everybody. The more people you have, the more power you have against or to bargain with the agency. Strength in numbers. Don't get so specific, LE only. How serious will NPS take, 20% of the workforce, whatever the case is. Include everybody, because ultimately, I know in my chapter, we're all here for the same reason. This I'm sure it's the same where you are. You're all there for the same reason, similar goals. You can help each other out. So keep fighting. Talk to everybody you see. I don't care if they rake leaves for a living. Talk to everybody you see. Print out some of those 1187s. Keep them handy with you. You can always scan them in and send them. But I'm happy that you've shown interest, and I'll say preemptively, welcome aboard.
Love it. Vince, you want to wrap us up?
Sure. So once again, thank you for giving us this opportunity, everyone, Jared, everyone on here. I know there was a few that had to log off, depending on where they're at. I know it's kind of late. It's actually more late on the East Coast than it is here on the West Coast. But again, thank you for giving us this opportunity. Yeah, thank you for giving us the opportunity for allowing us to speak to you guys. I mean, this is my first time doing something like this, as it probably is Will's as well. To be able to speak kind of like on the recruitment side of NTEU to get other entities to join us in the similar fight. We've got. I'm sure we do. I'm sure if we sat down and we could talk for hours about the similarities. I mean, Border Patrol is a different component under CBP. We're OFO, Office of Field Operations, but we've got our similarities. We got different unions that represent us, but we've got our similarities, and I'm sure you all do too. And we'd sit down there and we'd talk about them. What it comes down to is who you want, what union you'd like, or to back you with that fight, to give you that guidance, to have that legal representation. Because at the end of the day, we do have a legal team that represents us too in our local region, our regional office, our national office as well. And these are smart individuals. In my over 11 years as a chapter president and over 15 years now as a union leader, I've learned to not just get to know and network with our chapter presidents, but the individuals that run the show at the regional offices, at our national offices, and it takes I'm kind of a shy person, believe it or not, and it takes a lot to bring that out and actually to network with these individuals and know that when you go somewhere, you're recognized. They see you and they put you up for awards. In fact, this surprised me when I was told the other day by our legal counsel that she informs me that my name wasn't even provided to NTU by her. It was by somebody else, but she backed it. She says, "Yeah, I agree. Invite Vince to this." So it gives me great pleasure knowing that, you know, the big fights that we do behind the scene don't get they actually get knowledge or acknowledged by someone else, and they see what we do. And each component, each agency out there, especially you guys are law enforcement agencies, making that decision to come our way. And as Lee mentioned too, those 1187s, they're not hard to fill out, may look confusing, but getting those pushed out there and letting them know. I mean, I'm more than willing to speak to anybody else out there after hours, any time of the day too. I mean, my normal working hours are maybe more in line with East Coast time, because I start my work day usually around 6, but I get to work around 5, which is 8 o'clock your guys' time on the East Coast. So this is actually after hours for me, but I'm still up till midnight my time. I get about 4 hours of sleep, but I'm always open to communication with anybody, especially when it comes to union matters. So thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful, almost hour and a half. Again, a really great conversation. Reach out if you have any questions. You can reach us at organize@nteu.org, and it'll reach any of the organizers who are working with NPS. Thank you all, and have a great night.